On my 70th birthday, my daughter Rachel whispered to her husband Grant, "I'll keep him busy. You go to his house and change the locks." But when Grant came back and ran into the restaurant where I was sitting, he stopped suddenly. His face was pale and he was breathing hard. Something had gone wrong. "Your father. My name is Owen Mitchell. I am 70 years old, and what I found out that night tore my world apart. If you have ever felt hurt by the people you trusted the most, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel because you will not believe what I did next. Now, let me tell you how it all started. How my perfect family turned into this terrible situation. The day started in silence. It was my 70th birthday, but the house felt wrong. It was the first birthday since my wife Clara died 6 months ago. The silence in the house was very loud. Clara was the heart of this place. She was the one who would have been baking a cake right now. The one who would have filled these rooms with laughter. Now there was just emptiness. Rachel, my daughter, and her husband Grant kept insisting they take me out. They had been pushing me about it all week. "Dad, you can't sit alone on your 70th. Rachel had said on the phone, her voice sounding fake and too sweet. I was starting to notice this. They wanted to go to Vivid. It was some new fancy restaurant downtown, the kind of place with loud music and tiny amounts of food arranged on giant square plates. I already hated it. I told them I would rather just go to the Oak Barrel, the quiet steakhouse down the street. It was our place, mine and Clara's. We had celebrated every anniversary and every birthday there for the last 40 years. It was tradition. "Oh, Dad, that place is so boring," Rachel complained. "It's depressing. We want to celebrate you. Vivid is where everyone goes. It's impossible to get a table there." But Grant got us in. Got us in? Of course he did. Grant was always about showing off, always about showing people what he could get. So I said yes. I said yes because it was easier than arguing. I said yes because in the fog of sadness since losing Clara, I had just been saying yes to everything. It felt like I was moving underwater while the world sped up around me. They arrived at my house at 7 p.m. Rachel looked beautiful in a tight black dress, but her eyes were moving around nervously. Grant was already checking his phone the moment he stepped through the door. "Happy birthday, Dad," Rachel said. She gave me a quick, cold hug that felt like brushing against paper. I went to the hall closet to get my coat, the good one, the wool coat Clara had bought me for our last anniversary. I ran my hand over the sleeve. It still faintly smelled of her perfume. Or maybe I just imagined it. As I was putting it on, Grant sighed loudly from the front hallway, a big dramatic sound. Rachel looked at him right away, alert. What's wrong?" "It's work," he said, waving his phone like a flag. "This person on the West Coast team is about to mess up the Apex deal. I have to take this call. It's urgent." I didn't even know what the Apex deal was. I didn't care. He looked at Rachel, then at me, putting on his best sorry face. "Owen, I am so sorry. Look, you two go ahead. Get a good table. I'll drive separately. I'll join you as soon as I finish with this. Promise." I just nodded. I didn't care. I didn't even want to go. "Fine, Grant, handle your business." He nodded, looking relieved. Too relieved. He and Rachel walked toward the front door. I turned back to the closet mirror to fix my collar, annoyed that I was even going. And that's when I heard it. The front door was still open. They were standing on the porch just outside the doorway. They must have thought I couldn't hear them, that I was lost in my old man routine. It wasn't a shout, it was a whisper. Rachel's voice, sharp and sneaky, cut through the quiet night air. "Okay, good," she whispered. She was talking to Grant, not to me. "I'll keep him busy for at least 2 hours. You go to his house and change the locks. Simon is waiting for you there." My blood turned to ice, and I stopped breathing. The coat suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Change the locks on my house. Simon. That was Grant's father, Simon Mitchell. He was a retired locksmith. He spent his days working in his garage. Why was Grant's father meeting him at my house? To change my locks? It made no sense. This was the house I built with my own hands. The house I brought Clara to as a bride. The house where we raised Rachel. The house I planned to die in. My heart wasn't just sinking. It was pounding a hard, cold rhythm of betrayal. They thought I was just a sad old man lost in his sadness. They thought I was deaf. They thought I was stupid. I stood there, hidden by the hallway door, for a long second. My first thought was to burst out and scream, "What are you talking about?" But 40 years as a general contractor dealing with dishonest workers and lying clients taught me one thing. Never show your hand until you see theirs. Never let them know what you know. If they were playing a game, I would play it better. I took a deep breath, made my face look confused and sad, and walked out into the hallway. Rachel turned, her smile plastered back on. "Ready, Dad?" I looked past her at Grant, who was already walking quickly to his car. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Just fine, Owen," Grant called back. "Just work. I'll see you there soon." I watched him get into his BMW and speed away. Not in the direction of his office, but in the direction of my house. "Okay," I said, turning to Rachel. I forced a weak smile. "Let's go. I'm looking forward to this. Vivid." She linked her arm through mine, and I could feel the tension in her grip. She was a terrible liar, and I, her father, was about to become a much, much better one. I stepped back out of the hallway, pulling the coat on slowly, letting my hands shake just a little. I looked at the empty space where Grant's car had been. "You know," I said, my voice sounding weak on purpose, "my hearing must be going." Rachel, who was holding the door open, froze. Her smile got tight. "What do you mean, Dad?" "I thought I heard you say something about changing locks at my house." It was a direct hit. I watched her. She didn't just freeze. She flinched. It was the same reaction she had as a child when she was caught sneaking cookies before dinner. Grant, who was halfway down the walkway, stopped completely. He turned around slowly. The look they shared lasted only a second, but it was full of guilt. Then came the performance. Rachel burst into laughter. It wasn't her real laugh. Not that warm, deep laugh she shared with Clara. This was a high-pitched, frantic sound. "Oh, Dad, you really are getting old," she said quickly, rushing over to pat my arm. "You completely misheard me." "I did," I asked, playing the part of the confused old fool. "Completely?" she said, her eyes wide and too sincere. "I didn't say change locks at your house. I told Grant he needed to check the locks at our house. You know, our new alarm system." Grant, seeing his turn, hurried back up the walkway. He put on his concerned son-in-law face, the one I'd seen so many times at the hospital during Clara's final weeks. It was a good mask, polished. "That's right, Owen," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "Rachel's right. Just a security check. We were just saying how you've been so worried about security ever since Mom passed. We've been worried, too, about our place." It was smart in its own sick way. They took my sadness, my very real fear of being alone after Clara died, and they twisted it. They used my weakness to cover their lie. I looked at Grant. This was the man who 2 years ago came to me in tears. His hot new tech startup had failed. That's what he told me. He said he owed dangerous people money. He needed $500,000 or he'd lose everything, maybe even his life. I looked at Rachel, my only daughter, her face pale with fake fear as she begged me to help her husband. So I did. I took out half of my retirement money, the money Clara and I had saved for our old age, for the cruises we were supposed to take, for the grandkids' college. I gave it to him, $500,000. I saved him, and now here he was, patting me on the shoulder like I was a confused dog. Exactly, Owen, he continued, smiling. My new alarm system, it's been acting up. I just needed Simon, my dad, to meet me there and take a look. He's the only one I trust with locks. It was almost perfect. They used a small bit of truth. Simon was a locksmith to sell the lie. They were good. They were a team. They had practiced this. How many other lies had they told me? How many other things had I misheard? I looked from Rachel's bright, frantic eyes to Grant's smooth, reassuring smile. I saw the greed underneath. It was so clear now, like a crack in a perfect vase. They weren't just taking me to dinner for my birthday. They were putting on an act. They were managing me, and I was the thing they wanted to manage. Or rather, the house was. The house I built. The house where I'd patched Rachel's scraped knees and hosted her 16th birthday party. The house I'd just finished paying off, the house I'd worked double shifts for 25 years to pay for. They wanted it. I had to force the anger down. Tasted like metal in my throat. If I exploded now, I'd lose. They would just call me a crazy, sad old man. They would lock the doors and I'd never get back in. No, I had to play their game. I had to be the man they thought I was. I let out a long, slow sigh. I chuckled, shaking my head. Well, don't I feel foolish? I said, rubbing the back of my neck. I'm so sorry, kids. My hearing, it's just not what it used to be. Check locks, change locks. It all sounds the same to this old man. The relief that washed over their faces was instant. It was sickening. No worries at all, Dad, Rachel said, linking her arm through mine again. Her grip was tight, controlling. That's what we're here for, to take care of you. Now let's go get you that birthday dinner. You deserve it. You're right, I said. I certainly do. Grant gave me one last reassuring pat on the shoulder. I'll see you at the restaurant, Owen. Don't worry about a thing. He got back in his car and drove off. I watched him go, the lie hanging in the air between us. I knew they were lying. The explanation was too quick, too rehearsed. They were working together. I let Rachel lead me to her car. The chill I felt had nothing to do with the evening air. It was the cold, hard understanding that my daughter, my only daughter, was not just lying to me. She was plotting against me. I got into the passenger seat. The smell of her expensive new car leather filled my lungs. I buckled my seatbelt, my hand steady. It's so nice of you to do this for me, sweetheart, I said, turning to her with the saddest, most grateful smile I could make. She smiled back, her eyes shining with victory. Anything for you, Dad. The trap was set, but I wasn't sure who was the mouse and who was the cheese. The drive to the restaurant was the longest 15 minutes of my life. The inside of Rachel's luxury SUV, the one I'd helped her buy after her last car emergency, felt small and suffocating. The silence was heavy, thick with the words I'd heard on the porch. Rachel, true to her word, tried to distract me. She talked and talked. My goodness, how she talked. It was like a waterfall of nonsense. A frantic attempt to fill the air so I wouldn't have time to think. Look at the traffic tonight, Dad. Just awful, isn't it? I read an article that said this city has the worst traffic since 2019. I just nodded, my eyes fixed on the windshield. And the weather, can you believe this humidity in October? My hair is just ruined. I bought this new product, but it just doesn't work. Maybe I should, I stopped listening. I looked at my daughter, my little girl Rachel. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She was talking about hair products, but her eyes were checking the rearview mirror as if she was afraid of being followed. She wasn't distracting me. She was distracting herself. She was nervous. Good. She had every reason to be. We finally arrived at Vivid. It was worse than I imagined. The entrance was a purple neon archway. The music hit us before the door even opened. A heavy pounding thump 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 that I felt in my chest. Inside it was dark. It took my 70-year-old eyes a full minute to adjust. It was packed with young people in expensive clothes, all shouting at each other over the noise. "Isn't it fantastic, Dad?" Rachel yelled over the noise, smiling brightly. "It's vivid," I said. A hostess led us to a tiny table wedged between a fake indoor waterfall and a speaker. The menu didn't have prices. It just had descriptions. Broken down scallop foam. Essence of beetroot. I missed the oak barrel so much I ached. Rachel, however, didn't even look at the menu. She sat down and the first thing she did was slide her phone out of her purse and place it in her lap. Screen up, beneath the edge of the table. The distraction continued. "We should order the tasting menu, Dad. Grant says the chef here is amazing. He trained somewhere in Europe. Spain, I think." "That's nice, sweetheart." I watched her hands. Her thumb swiped, 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 checking messages, waiting for a text. I pictured Grant and his father, Simon, at my house right now. Were they drilling the lock? Was the alarm going off? I had set that system up myself, wired it directly to the local police. Grant didn't know that. A young waiter appeared. Rachel ordered a bottle of wine, the most expensive one naturally, and that broken down nonsense. I just asked for water. "Just water, Dad?" she asked, her concern painted on. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just thirsty," I said. The waiter left. The music pounded. Rachel kept glancing at her lap. Her leg was bouncing under the table. Thump, thump, thump. Then the conversation stopped. The frantic energy she had used to talk about the weather suddenly vanished. She put her phone face down on the table, a deliberate, practiced move. She was changing tactics. She leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of deep, serious concern. This was the real performance. "Dad," she started, her voice now soft and serious. "I've been really worried about you." I just looked at her. "No, really?" she insisted, placing her hand on her chest. "Ever since Mom. Well, you're all alone in that huge house. It's just so big for one person, isn't it?" There it was. The bait. "It's quiet," I said, my voice rough. "It's empty, Dad. That's what it is. And Mom wouldn't want you living in that empty place all alone. She would want you to be safe. She would want you to be taken care of." She used Clara. She used the memory of my wife as a tool to pry me from my home. The anger was so hot, so sudden, I almost choked on it. I had to clench my fists under the table to stop my hands from shaking. I looked down at my water glass. "It's empty," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "But it's my home. It's where it's all I have left of her." I let a little shake enter my voice. I let her see the sad old man she and Grant had whispered about. It worked. She saw the opening and she took it. She leaned in closer, grabbing my hand across the table. Her grip wasn't gentle. It was controlling. Her nails dug slightly into my skin. "But maybe it's time, Dad," she whispered, her eyes shining with a hungry light I'd never seen before, "to think about downsizing." She squeezed my hand. Maybe it's time you moved in with us. We have that lovely guest room downstairs. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. No maintenance, no empty rooms. We could take care of you." This was it. This was the play. It wasn't just a suggestion. It was the sales pitch. They weren't just changing the locks. They were planning to move me out. I looked at her hand on mine, then up at her hopeful, greedy face, and I knew Grant must have texted. He must have told her it was working. They thought they had already won. I looked at her hand. This hand that I used to hold when she was a little girl crossing the street. Now it felt like a trap. I let my own hand go limp, playing the part of the defeated old man. "Move in with you," I said, my voice just a low murmur. "Oh, Rachel, that's a big step." I don't know." She squeezed my hand harder. "Just think about it, Dad. No more worries. No more big empty house. Just family." Right then, as if called by the devil himself, her phone, which was still face down on the table, began to vibrate. It wasn't just a quiet buzz. It was an angry rattling sound that made the water in my glass shake. Rachel's smile didn't just fade. It shattered. She stared at the phone as if it were a snake. The caller ID must have been Grant's. The pounding music of the restaurant seemed to fade away. All I could hear was that demanding, desperate buzzing. She couldn't ignore this one. This wasn't a simple text. This was panic. She grabbed the phone, her movements jerky. "Oh, She fumbled the phone, almost dropping it. She glanced at me, her eyes wide with forced apology. "Dad, I am so sorry," she said, her voice suddenly high and tight. "It's my boss, Mr. Henderson. He never calls after hours. This must be an emergency. I have to take this. I'll be right back." She lied. She lied again so easily. It wasn't Mr. Henderson. It was Grant. I knew it. She knew I know she thought I didn't know. She shot up from the table, knocking her chair back slightly, and practically ran toward the restaurant's lobby, past the fake waterfall and toward the restrooms. I waited. 1 beat, 2 beats. I wasn't born yesterday. I didn't build a construction business from scratch by being a fool. And I certainly wasn't going to sit there like a lamb while the wolves decided how to carve me up. I slowly pushed my chair back, my movements careful, making a show of holding my hands on my knees as if standing up was hard. "Ugh," I grunted softly. "All this excitement. I think I need to use the men's room." I shuffled my feet, acting every one of my 70 years, and headed in the same direction Rachel had gone. The lobby was slightly quieter than the main dining room. The heavy thumping music was muffled by glass doors. I saw the signs for the restrooms down a short hallway, but I didn't go there. I saw Rachel. She wasn't in the hallway. She had pushed through a side door into a small, dark corner meant for waiters, right next to a large potted palm tree. She was pacing back and forth in the shadows, her back to me. She had the phone pressed to her ear so hard her knuckles were white. I stepped back, positioning myself behind a large decorative stone pillar. I was just another shadow in the dimly lit lobby, and I listened. I only heard her side of the conversation, but it was more than enough. "Grant, what is wrong with you?" she hissed into the phone. Her voice was no longer the sweet, concerned daughter. It was sharp, cold, and terrified. "What do you mean you can't get in? I gave you the code, the old one." She paused, listening. Her whole body was stiff. "What do you mean it's not working? Did you try the back door? I told you he leaves the key." Another pause, longer this time. "What?" she shrieked, then quickly lowered her voice, looking around frantically. "What do you mean the system is new? You said you checked it last week. You said this would be easy." She was almost shaking with anger. She gripped the phone with both hands. "So break it, Grant. Just break the door down. What is Simon doing? Isn't he the locksmith? Tell him to drill the lock. I don't care. Just get it done." I watched her listen again. Her face, even in the dim light, was a mask of disbelief. The color drained from her cheeks until she was as pale as marble. "What?" she whispered. She put her hand against the wall to steady herself. "What do you mean trapped?" She looked at her phone, then put it back to her ear, her voice now a terrified, trembling whisper that I could barely hear. "What are you talking about, Grant?" Her terrified whisper was still hanging in the air when the main doors of the restaurant burst open. They didn't just open. They slammed against the interior walls with a crash that cut through the pounding music. The entire restaurant, a sea of shouting young people and clinking glasses, fell silent for half a second. I saw him first. It was Grant. But this wasn't the slick, confident son-in-law who had left my house an hour ago, waving his phone and talking about the Apex deal. This was a different man. His face was the color of chalk, gleaming with a layer of cold sweat under the restaurant's ridiculous purple lights. His 800 suit jacket was twisted. His tie was pulled loose, his top button undone. He looked like he'd just run a marathon. He didn't see me. He didn't see our table. His eyes were wide, scanning the room with pure animal panic. Sir, you can't," the young hostess said, trying to stop him. He shoved right past her. He didn't push her, but he moved through her path as if she were a ghost. His eyes locked on the corner where Rachel was hiding. He stumbled past the indoor waterfall, his expensive shoes slipping on the damp tile, and lunged toward the potted palm. Rachel was still on the phone, her back to the room. "Grant, answer me." "What do you mean?" "Rachel," he gasped. She spun around, dropping the phone. It hit the floor with a clatter. "Grant, what are you doing here? What happened?" He grabbed her by the arms. His knuckles were white. He was panting, his chest heaving so hard he could barely speak. "It's bad," he wheezed, shaking his head. "Rachel, it's bad. Something went wrong. It went horribly wrong." I watched them from behind the pillar. Two people plotting together, their perfect plan falling apart. Rachel's eyes were frantic. She grabbed the front of his shirt. "What? Did you do it? Did you get the locks changed? Is it done?" Grant shook his head. His eyes squeezed shut as if he was in physical pain. "No!" he practically shouted, his voice cracking and high-pitched. "I couldn't. The code, it didn't work. The system, it's not what we thought." "What about Simon?" Rachel hissed, shaking him. "What about your father? He's the locksmith. Tell him to drill it. I told you to just break the door down." "I can't," Grant wailed. He finally opened his eyes, and what I saw in them was pure terror. Rachel, he's what, Grant?" she spat out. "He's trapped." Grant finally yelled, the word tearing out of his throat. "The locksmith, Simon, my dad. He's trapped inside the house. The new security system, it locked him in. The alarms are going off. The cops are on their way." That was it. That was the moment. The final piece of the puzzle fit into place. They weren't just checking locks. They were actively breaking in. And they had failed so badly, they had managed to get Grant's own father arrested in the process. I stepped out from behind the stone pillar. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I just walked calmly out of the shadows, my old work boots making no sound on the polished floor. I stepped into the narrow entrance of the corner, blocking their only exit. I said nothing. I just stood there, letting them see me. Rachel was the first to notice. Her frantic questions to Grant died in her throat. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes widened until I thought they would pop from her head. Grant, seeing the look of horror on his wife's face, spun around. His mouth fell open. The color, what little he had left, drained from his face. They both just stared. If I had risen from the dead right there in the middle of that tacky restaurant lobby, they could not have looked more terrified. They weren't just caught. They were caught by the confused old man they thought was safely 2 miles away being distracted by broken-down scallops. They knew. In that one silent, terrible moment, they knew that I knew. I stepped out from behind the pillar. The world seemed to come into sharp focus. Their faces, frozen in a silent scream of discovery, were lit by the tacky purple glow of the indoor waterfall. They looked like criminals caught in a spotlight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I let the cold anger do the work. My father? I asked. My voice cut through their panic like a razor. Grant just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, making no sound. My father, Grant? I repeated, taking one slow, deliberate step toward him. Has been dead for 30 years. He's buried in the plot right next to Clara. I let that sink in. So, I want you to explain to me very clearly what you are talking about. Rachel made a small strangled sound like a dying animal. Dad, you don't understand. No. Grant suddenly yelled, finding his voice. It was a desperate, cracking shriek that turned the heads of the hostess and a few people in the lobby. No, not your father. My father, Simon. My dad, Simon, he's trapped. Trapped where, Grant? I asked, keeping my voice dangerously calm. At your house, he stammered, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. He was helping me with the locks. The locks? I pressed, relentless. I thought you were checking the locks at your house. That's what Rachel said. No. Yes. I lied. He finally admitted. The confession burst out of him, sweaty and desperate. I was trying to surprise you for your birthday. A gift. I was upgrading your security system. Rachel, seeing the new lie, grabbed onto it like a drowning woman seizing a piece of wood. Yes, a gift, she chimed in, her voice unnaturally high. Grant was installing a new top-of-the-line system for you, Dad, to keep you safe. He wanted it to be a surprise. A surprise. They were breaking into my house with a locksmith as a surprise. The sheer breathtaking boldness of it almost made me laugh. So, I said, my voice flat, you hired your father, a locksmith, to break into my house as a gift. No, not break in, Grant yelled, rubbing his hands violently over his face, smearing the sweat. I was just replacing the locks and the system I installed last week, it broke. It locked him in. I froze. The system I installed last week. That was the key. A security system he installed last week. I had never said yes to a new system. I didn't need one. My house was a fortress. I built it myself. Solid brick walls, reinforced steel door frames, and half-inch deadbolts that I installed with my own hands 30 years ago. The system Clara and I had was simple, hardwired, and reliable. It worked perfectly. Why would he install a new one unless he needed control over it? Unless he needed a way to lock me out, not lock others in. And now, in a perfect twist of fate, his own father was the first victim of his high-tech, unauthorized trap. It locked him in. Grant was almost sobbing. Now he's inside and the alarms are going off. The silent alarm. It went straight to the police. They're coming. They're going to think he's a burglar. They're going to arrest him. He grabbed my arm. His grip wasn't threatening. It was desperate, like a child's. Dad, Owen, please. You have to come with us. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Rachel was already running for the main doors, digging in her purse for her keys. Grant's right, Dad. We have to go now. They're going to arrest Simon. Oh my God. This is a nightmare. They weren't worried about Simon. Not really. They were worried about themselves. They were worried about their entire pathetic plan being exposed by their own failure. They hustled me out of the restaurant, past the stunned hostess and the curious diners who were watching the drama unfold. We burst out into the cool night air. Grant didn't even wait for the valet. He sprinted down the ramp, yelling his ticket number, and threw a wad of cash at the attendant. He yanked open the back door of his BMW for me, almost pushing me inside like I was a sack of potatoes. Get in, Dad. Get in. He jumped into the driver's seat. Rachel dove into the passenger side, slamming the door. Drive, Grant. Just drive, she screamed. Grant slammed the car into gear, the tires squealing as he peeled out of the parking garage. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes wild with terror. "Dad, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "You have to tell them it was all your idea. You have to tell them you asked for the upgrade. If you don't, they're going to arrest my father." Grant drove like his life depended on it because I realized it probably did. He wasn't just speeding. He was fleeing. He ran a red light 2 blocks from the restaurant, earning a long, angry honk from a truck. "Grant, slow down. You're going to kill us?" Rachel shrieked, bracing her hands against the dashboard. "I can't," he yelled back, his voice cracking, his eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror as if he expected to be followed. "Don't you understand? My father is 72 years old. He has a heart condition. What if this kills him? We have to get there. A heart condition." I filed that little fact away. It was another layer of manipulation, another lever for him to pull. He wasn't worried about Simon's heart. He was worried about what Simon, cornered and embarrassed, would say to the police. I remained completely silent in the back seat. I was no longer a father-in-law. I was a hostage. I was the key to their entire pathetic act. They needed me. They needed the confused old man to show up and save them. We heard the sirens before we saw the lights. 2 blocks from my street, the night sky was flashing, alive and pulsing. It wasn't just one police car. It looked like the entire district was parked on my lawn. Red and blue lights flashed in a frantic, silent rhythm, painting the fronts of my neighbors' houses in strobing, nightmarish colors. Grant slammed on the brakes, pulling the BMW halfway onto the curb, blocking a fire truck. A fireman in full gear immediately started yelling at him to move the vehicle. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God. Grant, look at this." It was a circus. My quiet, peaceful street, the one Clara and I had cherished for its calmness, was a public spectacle. Neighbors I had known for 40 years were standing on their lawns in bathrobes and slippers, their arms crossed, watching. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down, the neighborhood's chief gossip, looked like she was memorizing every detail for her morning report. And there, in the center of it all, lit up by the flashing lights on my front lawn, was Simon. He wasn't in handcuffs. Not yet. He was sitting on the edge of an ambulance bumper, a silver shiny shock blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He looked small, pale, and utterly pathetic. An EMT was strapping a blood pressure cuff to his arm. Simon, a man I'd always known to be proud, almost arrogant, was visibly trembling. He kept his eyes fixed on the pavement, refusing to look at the circus his son had created. He looked ashamed. Grant, Rachel, and I scrambled out of the car. In that instant, every head on the street turned at once. I could feel their eyes on me. Poor old Owen. What trouble had he gotten himself into now? A police officer, built like a refrigerator, saw us approaching and immediately walked over. His hand was resting on his weapon, and his expression was one of absolute zero patience. His name tag read Kowalski. "Who are you people?" he barked, shining a blinding flashlight directly in Grant's face. This is his house," Grant stammered frantically, pointing at me. "This is Owen Mitchell. Promise." "Thank you," I said, my voice full of gratitude. He nodded curtly. "All right, we're clear here. We'll have the fire department finish their check, and then you can all go back to whatever you were doing." He turned and walked away, signaling to his fellow officers. The show was over. The moment he was out of earshot, I heard 3 distinct, simultaneous sounds. The whoosh of air as Grant, Rachel, and Simon all let out the breath they had been holding for the last 5 minutes. It was the sound of victory, their victory, Rachel rushed over and threw her arms around me. "Oh, Dad, you were wonderful. Thank you. Thank you." She was crying real tears now. Tears of pure relief. Grant came up, his false confidence returning, and clapped me hard on the shoulder. "Phew, that was close, huh? See, Dad, just like I said, a misunderstanding." He leaned in, his voice dropping. "It was that new system. Must be a problem with the sensors. I'll call the company tomorrow and have them fix it." He was still lying right to my face. Even after all this, he was blaming a problem for a trap he had set. They thought I had believed them. They thought I had saved them because I was a confused old man who had genuinely forgotten. They had no idea I had saved them because I needed them to keep thinking I was a confused old man. I pulled away from Rachel's hug, letting my body sag with fake exhaustion. "Oh my," I said, wiping my brow. That was too much for me. All those lights, the neighbors. "I know, Dad. I know," Rachel said, stroking my arm. "Let's get you inside." "No," I said, shaking my head. I looked at the house. The back door was probably broken from where the police had smashed it. "No, I don't want to be here tonight. This was too much." I looked at them, my eyes wide and tired. "Rachel, I think you were right. This house, it's just too much. I need a break." Grant and Rachel exchanged a look. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. This was their opening, bigger than they could have hoped. "What do you mean, Dad?" Rachel asked, her voice soft. "The fishing trip," I said. "I was planning to go next week. But I think I'll go now, tonight, or first thing in the morning." I looked up at them. "I need to get away. I think I'll go up to the lake for a few weeks, just to clear my head." The sun wasn't even fully up. It was just a weak gray light coming through the blinds. But Rachel and Grant were already at my door. 8 a.m. They were eager. "Dad, you're up?" Rachel said brightly, her voice a little too cheerful. She was carrying a thermos. "I made you coffee for the drive. Extra sweet, just how you like it." I never took my coffee sweet. Clara knew that. Rachel had forgotten. Or perhaps she never knew at all. "Thank you, sweetheart," I mumbled, taking the thermos. Grant was already in the driveway, standing by my old Ford F-150. He was loading my fishing gear, the rods, the tackle box, the cooler. He was handling them roughly, just cargo to be moved. I winced as he tossed my father's favorite reel into the truck bed. "Got you all packed up, Owen?" he called out, wiping his hands on his expensive pants. "You'll be on the lake before noon." Their relief was obvious. It stank of opportunity. They couldn't wait to get rid of me. They were practically shaking with the need to have me gone. They saw me as the final obstacle. Last night I had been their savior, the confused old man who cleared their names with the police. Today I was the dumb fool who was conveniently removing himself so they could make their next move. "I just need some peace," I said, leaning heavily on the truck door. I let my voice waver. After last night, all those sirens, it was too much. Rachel rushed over, her face a perfect mask of daughterly concern. "I know, Dad. I know. It was terrifying. That's why this is such a good idea." She patted my arm. "You just go. Don't worry about anything here. Grant and I will handle the house. We'll get that security system fixed. We'll take care of everything. You just rest." "I'll bet you will," I thought. "Thank you, Rachel. You're a good daughter," I said. Felt like ash in my mouth. I climbed into the driver's seat. Felt strange. This was the truck I'd used for my construction business for 20 years. The cab smelled of sawdust, metal, and old coffee. It smelled of work, of me. "You'll call us when you get there?" Rachel asked, hovering by the window. "Oh, the reception up at the lake is terrible. I said, starting the engine. I'll probably just unplug for a while. Don't you worry about me. But, Dad, I'll be fine, Rachel. I just need to be alone. I saw the look that passed between her and Grant. It was perfect. Don't worry about me. It was exactly what they wanted to hear. Okay, Dad, she said, stepping back, her smile bright and triumphant. Be safe. We love you. I love you too, I said. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb. I looked in the rearview mirror. They stood on the sidewalk in front of my house. My house, watching me leave. They didn't go inside. They just stood there watching until I turned the corner, making sure I was truly gone. The moment my truck disappeared, I saw Grant pull out his phone and pump his fist in the air. I drove for about 10 miles, heading north toward the highway, just in case they were following. They weren't. They were too arrogant, too sure of themselves. At the next exit, I pulled off the highway. I drove through the sleepy downtown streets until I reached the industrial park on the south side of town. The part of town they never visited. I wasn't going to the lake. I wasn't going fishing. I was going to war. I pulled into the gravel lot of Mitchell Construction. The sign was faded. I built the business from nothing. Just 2 hands and a toolbox. I hadn't officially retired. Not really. I just stopped. When Clara got sick, I handed the day-to-day operations over to my foreman. I hadn't been back in 6 months. I parked the truck and walked into the huge workshop. The smell of welding, motor oil, and fresh-cut lumber hit me. It felt more like home than my actual house did right now. In the back office, sitting behind a desk covered in blueprints and 3 different computer monitors, was Milo. Milo Petrucci. He's 68 years old, built like a fire hydrant, with hands like leather-bound bricks. He'd been my first ever hire 45 years ago. He was more than my foreman. He was the brother I never had. He was the one who sat with me in the hospital waiting room the night Clara was diagnosed. He was the one who helped me carry her casket. He was family in a way my own blood no longer seemed to be. And he was secretly a complete computer genius. He built his own servers. He could probably hack the Pentagon if he was bored. He looked up from his screen, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He saw me and his gruff expression broke into a rare, wide smile. Owen, what the heck are you doing here? I thought you were, grieving. I was, I said, closing the office door behind me. I dropped my fishing trip lie. Now I'm just angry. His smile faded. He took off his glasses. What's wrong? What did those 2 jackhals do now? Milo never trusted Grant. He called him the fancy suit. He said a man who never got his hands dirty couldn't be trusted. How right he was. I sat down in the old wooden chair opposite his desk. It squeaked under my weight, the same squeak it had for 20 years. Milo, I said, my voice low and hard. They think I'm dumb. They think I'm a lamb, a confused old fool. You, Milo snorted. You're the sharpest man I know. What is this about them? They're trying to take my house, Milo. Right now, while they think I'm off fishing. Milo's face darkened. He didn't question me. He just nodded, his loyalty absolute. He turned to his main monitor and cracked his knuckles. Who do I need to find, boss? Everyone, I said. Start with Grant, his company, his debts, and I want to know about something called Apex Holdings. And Milo, I need you to find out everything you can about the new security system he installed at my house. Milo's face was a mask of cold fury. He leaned back in his ancient squeaking office chair and crossed his massive arms. A confused old fool, you? He snorted, a sound like gravel turning in a cement mixer. Those vultures. I never liked him, Owen. I told you that. I told you he had weak eyes. You did, Milo. You did. I sat down. The familiar squeak of the visitor's chair was a strange comfort. But he's not just weak. He's desperate. And he's stupid. He tried to have his own father break into my house last night and they got caught. Milo's eyebrows shot up. What? You're kidding me. I wish I was. They got trapped by a new security system. Grant's excuse, I said, leaning forward, is that he installed it for me last week as a surprise gift. He said it broke. Broke? Milo spat. You don't just install a system like that. Those things are locked down. You need permission. You need passwords. Exactly, I said. That's what I need you to find first. The system is called Fortress Security. Grant said he installed it last week. I want to know who paid for it. I want to know who said it was okay. And Milo, I want every log, every keystroke, every access attempt. I want to know exactly what they were doing at my house last night. Milo didn't say another word. He just turned to his main monitor. His setup looked ancient, a mismatched collection of computer cases and monitors from different decades. But I knew what was inside those machines. He built them himself. They were faster and more powerful than anything Grant could buy at a big box store. His thick, rough fingers, the same fingers that could take apart a diesel engine in 20 minutes, flew across the keyboard with a speed that always amazed me. The only sound in the office for the next few minutes was the rapid clack, clack, clack of the keys and the hum of the servers stacked in the corner. Fortress Security, he muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the screen. Okay, they're a big-time national outfit, based out of Atlanta. Top-of-the-line gear. Not cheap. He wouldn't spare any expense, I said bitterly. Not when he's spending my money. You got that right, Milo grunted. Okay, I'm in their commercial accounts portal. This is sloppy work, Grant. He used his own name for the service inquiry. What an amateur. I watched the screen, though I couldn't follow what he was doing. He had 3 different windows open, lines of code scrolling past. Got it, he said, his voice hardening. Here's the work order. Installation at your address. Date 8 days ago. Just like he said. Premium home protection package. Cost $4,000. Paid by... He paused. One guess, Milo, I said. He clicked and a digital receipt appeared. Billed to a corporate card. Apex Holdings. My blood ran cold. Apex. He used the company card. He's arrogant, Milo said. Or stupid. Probably both. He kept digging, his brow furrowed. Okay, so he paid for it. But he can't just order and install at a property he doesn't own. He would need, here it is, the authorization form. The work can't start until the legal homeowner signs off. He couldn't have, I said. I was home all last week. An LLC formed 9 months ago. I can't see who owns it. It's buried under 2 other holding companies in Delaware. This is professional. This isn't Grant. He's not this smart. He's the chief financial officer, I said. He's a pawn, Milo corrected. He's the local face, but he's not the brain. Someone else is pulling these strings. But why your house? Why is your lot the target? I stopped pacing. Milo was right. It wasn't just about the house. It was about the land. My house sat on 2 acres. It was one of the original plots in Hillcrest before the area got trendy. It was prime. If it's about the land, I said, it's about the neighbors. I pulled out my old flip phone. Not a smartphone like Grant's, just a simple, reliable phone. I scrolled through the contacts. I hadn't called this number in almost a year, but I knew he'd pick up. Who are you calling? Milo asked. An old friend, I said. The phone rang 3 times. Then a loud, booming voice answered. Tom's Realty. You buying or selling? Hello, Tom, I said. It's Owen Mitchell. There was a half second of silence. then a bellow of laughter. "Owen, you old son of a gun. I thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. How's Clara? Is she—" He stopped. "Oh wait, Owen. I'm so sorry. I heard. My deepest condolences. I'm a darned fool." "It's all right, Tom. Thank you," I said, the familiar ache returning for a moment. I'm just calling with a question if you have a minute. For you, Owen, I got all day. What's on your mind? Don't tell me you're finally selling that beautiful house of yours." My knuckles whitened on the phone. "Something like that. I'm just curious. What's the market like in Hillcrest these days? I've been out of the loop." Tom laughed again, but this time it was the hungry laugh of a shark who smells blood in the water. Owen, what's the market like? Let me tell you, you didn't just call. You called at the exact right time. Your whole neighborhood isn't just on the market. It's exploding. You haven't heard about Rezoning 7, have you? I looked at Milo. His fingers were poised over the keyboard. Ready. "No, Tom," I said, my voice steady. "Tell me about Rezoning 7. My knuckles were white on the receiver of my old flip phone. "No, Tom," I said, my voice steady, betraying nothing. "Tell me about Rezoning 7. I heard Tom let out a low whistle on the other end of the line. "Owen, where have you been? Up at the lake already? It's the only thing anyone in my business has talked about for 6 months. The city council just pushed it through last Tuesday. It was controversial. A lot of backroom deals, if you ask me." "What kind of deals?" I asked, watching Milo's fingers fly across the keyboard as he typed Rezoning 7 into his search bar. "The big kind," Tom said, his voice dropping to a sneaky hush. "They're rezoning that entire quadrant of Hillcrest, your neighborhood. It's no longer just residential. It's being reclassified for high-density commercial development. We're talking skyscrapers, Owen. A new corporate campus." My throat felt dry. A corporate campus? My quiet street? Clara's garden. "But that's impossible," I stammered. "The neighborhood association, Mrs. Henderson. They would never allow it." Tom let out a bitter laugh. "The neighborhood association, Owen? They sold. All of them. They were bought out one by one over the last 8 months. All very quiet. All off-market deals. Mrs. Henderson sold 3 months ago for $5 million. Old man Peters, the one on the corner, he got 6. They all took the money and ran. All of them," I whispered. "All of them," Tom confirmed. "All except one. The Keystone. The big one. The 2-acre plot right in the middle." He paused for dramatic effect. "Your lot, Owen. You're the last holdout." I sank into the squeaky visitor's chair. I couldn't feel my legs. My lot. "Owen, listen to me." Tom's voice was urgent now. "There's a development firm, Apex Holdings. They're the ones behind it. They've bought up the entire block. They have every single property except yours. Without your 2 acres, their entire design fails. Your lot isn't just a part of their plan, Owen. It is the plan. It is the centerpiece. I thought about Grant and Rachel. Move in with us, Dad. We'll take care of you. The house is too big. They weren't trying to move me. They were trying to remove me." "Tom," I said, my voice barely audible. What is it worth? My house? What is it really worth now?" I heard him rustling papers. "Look, your house, the structure. God bless Clara. It's beautiful, but it's worthless. They'll tear it down in 10 minutes. The land? Owen, the land is everything. Your 2 million lot." He paused again. "Owen, the rumors on the street, the number I'm hearing. If you're the last piece of the puzzle, they're authorized to go as high as 20 million. The phone slipped. I fumbled it, catching it just before it hit the floor. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely hold it. 20 million. Tom, I whispered. I have to go. Owen, wait, he yelled. If you're thinking of selling, you cannot talk to them without me. You need representation. Owen, don't you sign anything. I won't, I said. I'll call you back. I hung up the phone. I placed it on the desk, but my hand stayed there, frozen, resting on the receiver. 20 million. I stared at the wall. I saw Clara's face. I saw the day we poured the foundation. I saw Rachel on her tricycle on the sidewalk. I saw Grant, his face pale and sweaty in the restaurant lobby, screaming about his father being trapped. It was never about the house. It was never about taking care of me. It wasn't even about the 2 million. It was about 20 million. This was the rush. This was the apex deal Grant was screaming about on the phone. He wasn't just on the deal. He was trying to steal the deal from me. Milo, I said. My voice couldn't turn my head. I just stared at the wall. Milo, you heard him. The only sound in the office was the frantic clack, clack, clack of his keyboard. He hadn't stopped typing since the call began. Milo, I repeated louder this time. The typing stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Boss, Milo said. His voice was strange. It wasn't angry anymore. It was hollow. It sounded like the voice of a man who had just looked into the abyss. I slowly turned my chair. Milo was staring at his main monitor. His face, usually so ruddy and full of life, was the color of ash. He looked pale. He looked sick. Boss, he whispered again, not looking at me. I found it. Apex Holdings. And? I asked, my heart pounding a slow, heavy drumbeat. It's a Delaware LLC, just like I said, buried deep. But I found the incorporation papers, the registered agent. I found the executive board list. He finally turned his head. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a terrible, sickening pity. You know anyone on this board of directors? Milo? What is it? Who is on that board? Milo swallowed, a hard, slow movement in his thick neck. He looked as if he was about to deliver a death sentence. And in a way he was. It's not the board, Owen. The board members are just ghosts. Lawyers registered in Delaware. It's the executive list, the officers, the people running Apex Holdings. Who? I demanded. My voice was a rasp. Milo took a deep breath. He didn't speak. He just turned his monitor so I could see it clearly. He pointed with one of his thick, rough fingers, a finger that was shaking slightly, at the list of names. President, vice president, and then the third name on the list, the chief financial officer. Milo read, his voice flat and dead. The man who signs the checks. The man who handles the money. He looked me straight in the eye. It's Grant. The name hung there in the dusty air of the workshop. Grant, my son-in-law. It wasn't a shock. Not really. It was heavier than that. It was the final brutal piece of the puzzle slamming into place. It was the sound of a coffin lid closing. Grant, I repeated. The name tasted like ash. 20 million. Rezoning 7. Apex Holdings. The urgent phone call on my porch about the Apex deal. The fake startup. The $500,000 I gave him. My God. I sank back into the squeaky visitor's chair. He didn't lose my money. He used it. He used my retirement money, my $500,000, to fund this, to start Apex, to buy out my neighbors. It looks that way, Owen, Milo said grimly. And Rachel, my daughter, my little girl. I'll keep him busy. You go change the locks. It all made sense now. The horrific, perfect, sickening sense of pure, calculated greed. They didn't just want the house. They needed the house. They needed it now. They're on a deadline, I said, the words coming out cold and clipped, the contractor in me analyzing the critical path. Tom said the deal just got pushed through. Apex has all the other lots except mine. My lot is the centerpiece. Without my 2 acres, the whole 20 million campus fails. Milo nodded, his face dark. They can't wait for you to die, Owen. They can't risk you finding out from Tom or someone else. They need to secure the property before the deal closes and the price becomes public. So, they install a new system, one they control. I continued, the coldness spreading from my gut to my fingertips. They get me out of the way with a fake fishing trip. They use Simon to change the locks. And when you come home, Milo finished, his voice a low growl, your key doesn't work. Your old alarm code is useless. They're inside. They tell you it's for your safety. They offer you a guest room. They pressure you. They tell you you're confused. And I'm locked out, I whispered. Homeless. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Milo, the POA, the financial power of attorney. He tricked me into signing. Milo's eyes widened in dawning horror. Owen? No. Yes, they don't even need me to sign the deed. Grant can sign it for me. He can legally sell my house right out from under me, and I can't do a thing to stop him. And Rachel, she was the key. She was the one who could sell the story. The loving, sad daughter forced to take control because her poor old father had lost his mind. They weren't just trying to steal my house. They were trying to steal my life, my identity, my sanity. All for 20 million. I looked at Milo. Absolutely. That's perfect. I'll call Ms. Diaz, our lawyer. She handles all our real estate. I'll set it up for the morning. Oh, Dad, you're doing the right thing. You're finally letting us take care of you. Our lawyer, Miss Diaz. They already had a lawyer on retainer. Of course they did. Okay, sweetheart, I whispered. Okay, I'll drive back tonight. That's wonderful. Just come straight to our apartment when you get back. Okay? Don't even go to the house. You can stay with us tonight. Just come to us. We'll handle everything. Okay, I said. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up the phone. I placed it on Milo's desk. I looked at my oldest friend. His grim expression had been replaced by a slow, cold smile. She took the bait, boss, he said. Like a starving shark, I replied, the ice in my veins spreading. She didn't even hesitate. I was still holding the burner phone to my ear. Okay, sweetheart, I whispered. Okay, I'll drive back tonight. That's wonderful. Just come straight to our apartment when you get back. Okay? Don't even go to the house. Her voice was still sweet, full of that sick, sweet poison, but my thumb was already moving to the end button. I was pulling the phone away from my ear, already turning to look at Milo. But before my thumb could connect, the line crackled. It wasn't a disconnect. It was a fumbling sound. The sound of the phone being dropped against her chest or muffled against her shoulder. She must have thought the call was over. She must have thought the confused old fool was disconnected, gone already, driving back, defeated. And then I heard it. It wasn't her sweet, concerned daughter voice. It wasn't the fake, tearful voice. This was a sound I had never heard from her in her entire 42 years of life. It was a raw, triumphant, unrestrained shriek. Grant! The sound was so sharp, so sudden, it made me physically flinch. I froze, my thumb hovering over the button. Milo, watching my face, went completely still. Grant! Oh my God! He bought it! I stood paralyzed, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to my daughter celebrate. We did it! She screamed. Her voice was giddy, breaking with a hysterical, joyous laughter that chilled me to the bone. He agreed. The confused old fool finally agreed to sign. The house is ours. We did it. The confused old fool. Not Dad, not my father. The confused old fool. It wasn't just betrayal. It was contempt. It was the sound of a predator, slick with victory, standing over its kill. And I was the kill. I stood there in Milo's grimy office, listening to my daughter dance on my grave. I heard Grant's voice, muffled in the background, just as ecstatic. "Are you serious? He's coming tomorrow? He's signing tomorrow?" "Yes," Rachel shrieked, laughing so hard she sounded like she was choking. "He dropped his phone in the lake. He's using a bait shop phone. He's completely broken. He said he's tired of fighting, that he just wants us to take care of him. He's driving back tonight and coming straight to our apartment. He doesn't even want to go back to the house." I heard a sharp slap, a high five, a sound of pure celebration. "It's over, baby." Grant's voice came through clearer now, arrogant. "It's finally over. That 20 million, it's ours." 20 million, he said the number. They weren't just stealing my home. They were liquidating my entire life. My legacy. Clara's legacy. They weren't taking care of me. They were disposing of me. They were going to put me in their guest room, the confused old fool, while they sold my life's work to the highest bidder. The $500,000 I gave Grant wasn't a loss. It was an investment. He had used my own money, my retirement, Clara's security, to fund the very scheme to destroy me. And Rachel, my daughter, she was his willing, gleeful accomplice. The memory of her at Clara's funeral, her face a perfect mask of grief, flashed in my mind. Had they been planning this even then? Had they looked at my wife dying in that hospital bed and seen nothing but a roadblock to their payday? I heard more muffled sounds, more joyous, whispered congratulations, and then finally, click. The line went dead. She had finally hung up, never knowing I had been her silent, horrified audience. I slowly, deliberately lowered the burner phone. I placed it gently on Milo's desk, right next to the blueprints for a job I no longer cared about. The workshop was silent. Even the big industrial fans seemed to be holding their breath. I didn't say a word. I just looked at Milo. He just looked at me. His face was hard, his eyes dark with a shared, terrible understanding. He had seen it all in my expression. He didn't need to ask what I'd heard. The confused old fool. The words hung in the air between us. Nothing needed to be said. Milo nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. He turned, picked up his own office phone, and started dialing. Miss Diaz was ready. I didn't go to their apartment. I didn't drive back. Couldn't. Instead, I went back to Milo's. I spent the night on the lumpy cot in his office, surrounded by the familiar, honest smells of motor oil and welding flux. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the shadows on the ceiling, listening to the old building groan and settle in the night. I was a general preparing for the most important battle of my life. The next morning, I didn't shave. I didn't shower. I put on the clothes I'd been wearing for 2 days. My oldest flannel shirt, the one with a small paint stain on the cuff. My denim work jeans worn thin at the knees. My steel-toed boots, scuffed and caked with old mud. I looked in the grimy mirror in Milo's workshop bathroom. I looked exactly like the man they wanted me to be. The confused old fool, defeated, grieving, and easy to control. Milo drove me downtown, his face set in stone. "You sure about this, boss? You look like heck." "That's the point, Milo," I said. "You wait in the lobby. Don't come in unless I call you, but keep your phone on." Miss Diaz's office was on the 19th floor of a glass tower that scraped the sky, the kind of place where the air itself seemed to cost money. I shuffled in my old boots, looking obscene on the plush, silent gray carpet. The receptionist, a young woman with a sharp suit and a sharper nose, looked at me like I was a spill she needed to clean up. "Owen Mitchell?" I mumbled, looking at the floor. I'm here with my daughter, Rachel Hayes." Yes, Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice tight with disapproval. They are waiting for you in conference room A. I followed her down a long, bright hallway. She pushed open a heavy glass door, and there they were. They weren't just happy, they were radiant. It was like they had won the lottery. No, it was like they had stolen the lottery and knew absolutely that they were getting away with it. Rachel was in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my truck. Grant stood beside her in a crisp navy suit, a new gold watch gleaming on his wrist. They were standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city spread out below them. Their city. Dad, Rachel trilled. She rushed over, her heels sinking into the carpet. She threw her arms around me, pulling me into a hug that felt like steel. I could smell her expensive perfume. It was suffocating. Oh, Dad, I am so proud of you, she whispered, her voice thick with fake emotion. You are doing the right thing. Mom would be so proud too. The use of Clara's name was a deliberate twisting knife. I had to clench my jaw to keep from recoiling. I just patted her back, my hand limp and dirty against her clean, expensive suit. Okay, sweetheart. Okay. Grant strode over, his smile wide and victorious. He didn't hug me. He clapped me on the shoulder. A hard, controlling gesture. A gesture of ownership. Owen, glad you made it. Glad you came to your senses. He then gestured to the woman sitting at the head of the massive polished mahogany table. Ms. Diaz. She was exactly as I remembered her from when Clara and I had drawn up our wills. She was in her 50s with sharp features, hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that missed nothing. A hawk in $1,000 suit. She was my shark. She met my gaze for a fraction of a second. No recognition, no emotion. She was a professional, but Grant, in his monumental, blinding arrogance, thought she was his. Dad, he said, his voice booming with the false kindness one uses for a child or a simpleton. I want you to meet our lawyer. This is Ms. Diaz. She handles all our real estate. She's the best. She's going to take care of everything for us. He turned to Miss Diaz. Miss Diaz, this is my father-in-law, Owen Mitchell. He was introducing me to my own lawyer, the woman who Milo and I had been on a 3-hour strategy call with last night. The woman who had already drafted the fraud claims and the civil complaint. I played my part. I shuffled my feet, looked at the floor, and gave a small nervous nod. Mom, he mumbled. Mr. Mitchell, she replied, her voice a flat, neutral monotone. Please sit. They took their seats on one side of the table like a king and queen holding court. I took the seat opposite them, alone, my old work clothes looking pathetic against the vast polished wood. Well, Grant said, rubbing his hands together, the picture of eager success. Let's get this show on the road. We have celebratory lunch reservations at noon. Of course, Miss Diaz said. She slid a thick stack of documents across the table. It must have been 200 pages, bound in a neat, professional blue cover. Grant's eyes lit up. This was it. The prize. The 20 million. He reached for the stack eagerly, his fingers almost trembling as he pulled it toward him. He smiled at Rachel, a quick, triumphant flash of teeth. He flipped open the cover, his eyes scanning the first page, ready to see the words deed transfer, ready to sign, ready to claim his victory. Grant pulled the thick bound document across the polished mahogany. He was still smiling, that wide, predatory grin of a wolf who had cornered its prey. He looked at Rachel and gave her a quick, triumphant wink. He was the king of the world, the man who had outsmarted everyone. He was the CFO. He was the man in charge. He flipped open the blue cover. I watched his face. It was, I decided, the single most satisfying moment of the last 6 agonizing months. The smile didn't just fade. It froze, cracked. His eyes, which had been bright with 20 million greed, narrowed in sudden, sharp confusion. His brow furrowed. He read the first page, his lips moving silently. I could almost hear him sounding out the words in his head. Superior Court. Civil complaint. Plaintiff, Owen Mitchell. Defendants, Grant Hayes, Rachel Hayes. He looked up. His face was pale, his eyes darting wildly from the paper to Miss Diaz and then finally to me. "Wait," he said, his voice, usually so smooth and confident, was a hoarse whisper. This isn't the deed. This isn't the house transfer." He was broken. But Rachel finally broke. The reality of what I was saying hit her. Not the morality, not the crime, but the consequence. The apartment," she cried, her voice cracking. You're taking our home. But if we sign that, where will we live? Where will we go?" I looked at her, my daughter, the confused, greedy, pathetic shell of the girl I had raised. She wasn't crying for me. She wasn't crying for her mother. She wasn't even crying for her criminal husband. She was crying for her penthouse. I felt the last tiny flickering ember of pity in my heart die, turn to cold, hard ash. I looked at her, my face devoid of all emotion. "I don't care." Her head snapped up, shocked. "That," I said, my voice flat and final, "is not my problem anymore." I pointed to the papers. "Sign it." 6 months. That's how long it's been. 6 months since I sat in that glass tower and watched my daughter's face crumble as her world evaporated. I stood on the flat brown earth where my house used to be. It was gone. I'd had it demolished 2 weeks after I won the case. I couldn't stand to look at it. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a monument to their greed. Now it was just 2 acres of clean, raw dirt, smelling of sawdust and the cool October morning. Milo stood beside me, his arms crossed. He was holding a large roll of blueprints. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the distant sound of construction 2 blocks over. The Apex Holdings project. It was stalled, tangled in lawsuits and financing problems now that they had lost their centerpiece. My centerpiece. "Did you ever hear from them?" Milo asked, his voice a low rumble. I knew who he meant. "No." They had signed. Of course they signed. In that polished conference room with their lives reduced to 2 terrible options, they signed. Grant's hand shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. Rachel just sat there, hollow, signing her name like a robot. I walked out of that office and never looked back. Miss Diaz was ruthless. She was a shark, and she was my shark. The quitclaim deed was filed before they even left the building. She had the penthouse on the market by the next morning. It sold in 3 days in a cash deal. The 1.5 million Grant had stolen was returned to my trust, along with another $500,000 in damages. As for Grant, the civil lawsuit, though we settled it, became public record. The Apex deal vanished. The loan sharks Rachel had screamed about, well, I imagine they found out he no longer had a $20 million payday. I heard from Tom, my realtor friend, that Grant was being investigated by the state for his gambling debts and financial misconduct. He and Rachel were last seen packing their expensive car in the middle of the night. They lost the apartment. They lost everything. They simply vanished. They were gone. I had my money back. I had my land. And I had my freedom. Milo finally unrolled the blueprints, the large white paper crackling in the quiet air. He held the plans open for me to see. "So," he said, a slow, gravelly grin spreading across his face. "The confused old fool decides not to sell the 20 million lot to the Apex vultures after all." I let out a short laugh. It was the first real laugh I'd had in a long time. Felt good. "No," I said, kicking at a clump of dirt with the toe of my boot. "I'm not selling. The Apex guys must be spitting nails. Their whole glass tower is ruined. They have to build around me now. Milo chuckled. They offered you a fortune. They did, I admitted. 22 million. That was their final offer last week. They just don't get it, Milo. They think the money is the prize. They think this land is just rezoning 7. I looked out over the empty space. I didn't see the dirt. I saw Clara 20 years ago, kneeling right here, planting her hydrangeas. I saw her sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset. They don't understand, I said, my voice softening. This was her favorite spot. She loved this land. She hated the idea of skyscrapers. She always said this neighborhood didn't need more cold glass boxes. She said it needed kindness. I turned to Milo. She always wanted to do something for the families at the oncology center. The ones we met when she was sick. The families that had to sell their own homes just to pay for treatment. The ones who had nowhere to go. Milo nodded. He knew. He'd been there with me, sitting in those hard plastic hospital chairs. She always said, I continued, my voice thick with the memory, that we had so much, that we were lucky, that others had nothing to hold on to when the storm came. I pointed to the blueprints in his hand. So we're not selling. We're building. Milo's grin widened. He unrolled the plans fully, proudly. He pointed with a thick finger to the bold title block at the bottom of the page. The Clara Mitchell Center, he read aloud, his voice clear and strong in the morning air. A free residential therapy and support facility for families coping with long-term illness and loss. I nodded. The ache in my chest, the one that had lived there since Clara's last breath, finally eased. It was still there, but it wasn't grief anymore. It was purpose. My daughter Rachel, I said. The name felt strange on my tongue. She told me it was time for me to move on, that I should leave this house and move in with them. I looked at the empty land, at the future we were about to build on the ruins of their greed. She was right, I said. It is time to move. I looked at Milo. I'm moving this 20 million exactly where it belongs. I'm moving it into Clara's legacy. I took a deep breath of the clean, cool air. That, I said, is the only thing worth anything. The lesson learned from this story is that greed and lying ultimately destroy the very foundation of family. It shows that underestimating others, especially those you are supposed to respect, is a fatal mistake. While manipulation like Grant's and Rachel's may seem like a fast path to riches, it's built on a rotten foundation. True strength and legacy aren't found in what you steal, the 20 million, but in honesty and using your resources for a purpose greater than yourself, just as Owen did by building the Clara Mitchell Center. This story reveals the devastating truth of betrayal within a family. Have you ever felt underestimated or taken advantage of by the very people who should have loved you most? Share your experience in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice being served.